Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is Gitxaala producer and filmmaker Leena Minifie. Leena has worked on numerous projects, including the award-winning Bones of Crows and British Columbia, An Untold History. She most recently co-directed and produced the feature-length documentary, The Good Canadian. The film is described as part real-life horror story, part national reckoning, and a portrait of Canada's ongoing injustices against Indigenous peoples. The Good Canadian had its world premiere on APTN and CBC on September 30th. Leena, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
As I mentioned in the intro, The Good Canadian is described as part investigation, part real-life horror story, and part national reckoning. How would you describe the doc?
Well, I would describe the doc as a 4-year project that me and David Paperny have been working on so it's a long-term project, but really it's accumulation of me and David's, both of our work, looking at genocide, and in this context, looking at what's happening in Canada, not in the past, but what's happening right now today. It's talking to those people who understand complicity and culpability, and really turning the camera around on those who intersect with Indigenous lives, like the 95% of folks, as opposed to just going to the 5% and asking the victims of what's happening. We're trying to talk about the intersection of where non-Indigenous people meet Indigenous people and how things are now, 10 years after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
4 years, that's a good chunk of time. Did you know it was going to take that long when you set out to do the documentary?
No, not at all, Dennis. We thought we had a really good project in our hands. It took a lot of advocacy. APTN coming on actually was really the kick that sort of was the rocket ship behind the project sailing. So we're really grateful for APTN coming on board, and then CBC came on board after that.
Well, the film opens with a real-life horror story, I would say, the apprehension of an Indigenous baby from the mother in a hospital. Birth alerts, or the practice of forcibly removing babies at birth, is something that was supposed to have been outlawed in a number of provinces, including British Columbia, here in Manitoba. What did you discover about that?
Well, the practice of birth alerts actually was really, Jane Philpott kind of stood up and said, we're going to stop this 5 years ago, and said this is no longer going to be happening on our watch or any time in the future. Quebec was the last province to make it illegal, so it actually has been illegal for numerous years. And we found out during our research, and obviously talking to people and being able to film this, was that it's still happening continuously. It's a practice that's illegal, and it's still going forward in Canada today.
Yeah. There are some very well-known people in the film, like Cindy Blackstock, former Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Haidu, but you also have former bureaucrats, a birth worker. Can you tell us about some of those people you spoke with that we don't often see, on TV that are featured?
Yeah, I mean, there's 12 people in the film. We had gone through, just so you know, a bit of background. We had a deep research team. We had at least 5 or 6 people on our research team, including David and myself, looking for folks to talk to. And those that came forward really are from all walks of life. They're from social work, they're from the justice system, they're from healthcare, they're from education, and they all intersect with Indigenous lives in some capacity. So our net was cast really wide. We ended up talking to judges and police and nurses and doctors. And so some of those people who came forward are doctors, a criminal lawyer, and a social worker, as you can see in the film. And we were really honored that they wanted to tell us their stories and what they witnessed, what they've seen, how their lives intersect with Indigenous folks, and the casualties and fatalities that are still happening and occurring under the federal, provincial, municipal, and governments,
Do you think that the film kind of lays out that Indigenous peoples are discriminated against since birth or even before?
Yeah, I mean, discrimination is this life cycle, right? We have this life cycle of children being born. First of all, mothers are pregnant. They're getting discriminated before the child is even born. Then they're being born, and then they intersect with government. They intersect with government peoples. It doesn't happen to non-Indigenous peoples. A lot of non-Indigenous peoples we know have never even met a social worker. They don't even know what they do. They haven't been interacting with a police in any sort of traumatic or negative way. So when we talk to Indigenous folks, they are intercepted with government lives, whether it be federal or provincial, and multiple level of governments. And that connection ends up staying out through the entire life. So you're talking about a mother pre-birth, then birth, then in going into elementary school, experiencing racism, high school, then you become of childbearing age, you go into the workforce, and then potentially those things are affected, like foster care being taken away. Then there's a pipeline to prisons from foster care, and also murder missing women. So it never ends, the amount of interconnections between the oppressive powers in our life cycle. And so that's really what the film was trying to show, that it's relentless.
Yeah, you know, the things that you're talking about here are things that would be familiar for yourself and I, that we hear about all the time. But were there things that you were told or heard during the 4 years filming that shocked you?
Yeah, I mean, people were so open and honest with us, and our interviews were so in-depth. Actually, some of our interviews took between 4 to 6 hours to really go deep, and me and David were sort of playing off each other and being able to tag in and ask questions as we saw fit. And in those interviews, we couldn't obviously get everything into a 90-minute film, but there are tons of things we had to leave out of the film, and those things were equally as shocking, I think, to Canadians as what is in the film. So,
anything that really stays with you?
I mean, the ease of which our kids can get left in society. I mean, how schools inflict the push-out rate on our really amazing, intelligent children. How easy it is to be swept up in foster care and group homes is incredible. You know, things that regular non-Indigenous parents do just wouldn't be a flag, and it is a flag to those social workers who are quite young, you know, most of them in their 20s and non-Indigenous. Like small things on checkups in houses, like things that we heard that if a woman could be written down or written up on her report if she had like a bruise on her arm, or like her bra strap was showing, or there's like a hole in her pants, or a couple dishes in the sink. Things that we all kind of have in our lifetime could be written up as a report as a justification for keeping your kids away from you. I don't know anybody in Canada that has a perfect dust-free, sink-free life. I don't. I mean, some of the birth alert stories that we've heard of you know, there being legitimate plans in place, and maybe like even 10 or 12 people surrounding a mother who, you know, has quit substances, has done everything right, has corrected her entire life, and then still gets her kid taken away. So there are things of, you know, there are things I couldn't tell. There was one person who passed away that I was speaking with, and he was talking about, you know, how long that people actually knew about murdered and missing women in those reports. So there's things we couldn't get in the film, but as you know, it's in this news life, it's never ending, those stories, right? It's just picking the ones that can connect the dots, and really try to do this for the first time, putting the puzzle piece together and show what Indigenous lives have to deal with, but also how, like, there's over 100,000 federal government workers, and then there's tons more in the province and in our own communities, that how much control and power that these policies have over us and behaviors have over our lives and the quality of our lives.
Yeah. Leena, more to talk about here with the documentary and your career as well. We just have to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is filmmaker Leena Minifie, and we've been talking about her latest documentary, The Good Canadian, which traces the impact of racism and racist policies in this country on Indigenous communities and peoples. Leena, you co-directed this documentary with an Academy Award nominated director, no less. Why did you want to team up on the film?
Well, I think David should be here to answer that question, but David actually found me through a lot of our mutual colleagues and friends. He was talking to Cindy Blackstock sort of about specifically her fight against the federal government to fight for children and equality and equity for kids. And she turned to him and said, you know, this is a great story, but maybe this is not your story. Like, what are non-Indigenous people doing? We're 10 years past the TRC. How are non-Indigenous people, the 95%, interacting with our communities? Who is responsible there? How can that part of society change to really change Indigenous lives? And so she kind of gave a call to action and a challenge, and he started to really dig in deeper, and then we were actually match made with some amazing funders and filmmakers who got us together. So we stepped onto the project and we ended up in the same place, but I like to tell the broadcasters, we took a different tunnel when I jumped on board, but we got to the same place, so.
Yeah, are you hoping that the film is as much for non-Indigenous peoples as Indigenous peoples?
Yes, I mean, that was the intent from the beginning. I think APTN was very considerate, saying we'll definitely have this on here, but we would love to partner with a non-Indigenous broadcaster like CBC in order to get mainstream Indigenous or non-Indigenous Canada to look and settlers to have a chance to see this as well.
Well, what do you hope viewers take away from the film?
I mean, there's a lot packed in there. I think it's the first big idea investigative film that's done Indigenous in this way, so it's a real huge honor to work with David on something this gigantic, but to know that there are reasons and there are precedents and there are policies, and everything in Canada was set up in a way that we still have an apartheid system. There's still a separate society where Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, even though we're walking around society the same, we really need to look at how do we move forward now, how do we, and you know, how is the Indian Act still a thing today, and to make sure that we are actually implementing these recommendations from the TRC, which is only 13, out of 94 implemented today, and most of those are actually Canadian society that has to implement them.
Yeah. 4 years working on this, the rollout's still underway, but what's going to stick with you most from this project? I
mean, the generosity of our interviewees, the generosity of the community, all of my film team, the cast and crew that surrounded us in making this, working with, established researchers like Jennifer Chu, Chantel Bell-Richard, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning Indigenous researcher journalist. Having that big team behind me and to be able to dig in and everybody working in the same way with the same focus in mind has been amazing. And this is my directorial debut. I'm more of a producer, and I'm really interested in going ahead and producing more people and setting up the container for them to tell their stories. But this is going to be, probably, like, this will be, there's Leena before this and Leena after this film. So, and learning from David Paperny, who's just like the highest caliber seasoned journalist, professionally worked at CBC like I did, worked from the grassroots journalism all the way up to being a documentary maker, and obviously nominated for Academy Award. Like, seeing his trajectory and how he operated, I learned so much through him. I'm grateful and honored and humbled.
Nice. Well, I guess we're going to talk a little bit about pre-Good Canadian Leena now. Yeah. And you've been involved in some other really big, critically acclaimed projects like Bones of Crows. You're the founder of Stories First Productions. You even worked here at APTN for a little while. We have a photo of you from back in 2006. What led you into news, I guess, and storytelling?
That's a really good story. I mean, it's a long one. Let me try to truncate it. I started off really writing small articles in news. I went to broadcast school, film school, twice. I went once here in Vancouver. And really after that, we're talking like early 2000s, 2000, 2001. After that, there wasn't the doors and the gates open for Indigenous filmmakers like they are now. So journalism was a really natural way of keeping my storytelling skills going. And it was like a lower bar to entrance to be a journalist. And also I could make sure I tell stories of my nation and see, really putting forward what representation is, because back then still representation was just beginning. APTN was just starting back then. So APTN was really the place I cut my teeth, not only on series and nonfiction shows, but also in news. And so having that opportunity to work in community, keep our protocols, keep our values within APTN was huge for me, especially because I switched from mainstream, then came to APTN after.
It wasn't long after that you started Stories First Productions. Was there a reason? I mean, the good Canadian, I would say, is journalism, but was there a reason you wanted to move on to other projects on the screen instead of news?
I think news is always woven in, but I do work on narrative and unscripted. I think there's both reasons for doing that. There's some stories you can't tell, I don't think, without using a fiction lens. But they are usually mostly based on either historical facts or things that have happened or things that are pertinent into the community today. But I feel like news is something that's always going to draw me back for my own projects. I'm really interested in unscripted. And usually on the West Coast here, I say this, in like Toronto and like bigger cities, you get to kind of really focus on maybe just narrative or just unscripted. But in BC, we're a lot more flexible because the projects we're almost like an island. The projects are a bit different when they come to you, and sometimes you have to be flexible around those. And it's always good you're still making the container, you're still producing stories, right? So.
Leena, more to talk about here. We do just have to step aside for one last break, but stick around, there's more to come. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is filmmaker and producer Leena Minifie. And Leena, 20 years plus in front of the cameras, behind the scenes. What changes have you noticed in that time?
Oh, there's never ending changes, Dennis. I'm sure you've seen changes in your own time too at APTN. I feel like this generation coming up is some of the biggest talent and the biggest stars we've seen. To know that these burgeoning youth right now, which are the highest number in Indigenous youth, I think, since my community experienced smallpox, the coming up of all these talented youth are creating a renaissance for Indigenous storytelling right now. Yeah, I love seeing the youth doing circles around us, honestly. I have never seen such high caliber storytelling. Either it comes to Tanya Talag, her new film Red Rising that just came out, or Meadowlarks. There was 8 to 9 films this year that are released that are long form, and the Indigenous news that's happening right now. There's not only just APTN, which really set precedent and started for all other, set the pavement and cemented for all other Indigenous news, but there's online digital news, there's independent, there's magazines still. I just think that Indigenous journalism and storytelling is flourishing in a way that I could never dream before when I was young.
Indeed. You've worked on some pretty big adaptations in the past, Eden Robinson's Monkey Beach, Richard Wagamese's Indian Horse, but wondering if you could give us an update on the adaptation of Joshua Whitehead's novel, Johnny Appleseed. Your website says it's going to be a 7-part TV series, which sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, you might have to answer that question, but I can tell you right now, The industry's tough, so series are tough to get off the ground right now. We have the option for Johnny Appleseed still. We're working with Joshua Whitehead and obviously working with Arsenal Press. We are changing and adapting the story into a storytelling. The project is moving and shifting. I don't know if we're going to go necessarily a series route, but it is becoming a project. So that's all I can say at this moment, unfortunately.
Well, wishing you and Joshua and everybody working to bring that forward all the best on making that happen.
Thank you. Yeah, and you'll be the first to know when things start to shift and change for the public. Yeah.
Can't wait. I always hate asking this question because you've just released something, but you're never not doing something. Are there other exciting projects you have on the go despite having just released something that you worked 4 years on?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I do like to savor the moment of after 4 years of a project being like, we did this, but there's always other things in development burning in my pocket. So, Stories First itself has a comedy sitcom that is in development right now, a docu-series that I'm working with the great Robert Jago. Am I allowed to say that?
Nice.
And I have 2 other projects that have come to me from out east that want me on board in different capacities. Producing and executive producing has been coming forward now. So yeah, there's a lot happening, and I'm happy to say that Vancouver and Toronto, I've heard right now, is almost back up and at 'em in action after these last couple of years of being a bit dry. So that's really exciting to hear. Everybody is working and getting busy right now.
For sure. Looking forward to that Robert Jago production there. Just lastly here, Leena, any advice for future filmmakers or storytellers out there?
Yeah, I would say keep it interesting, keep it weird. Know what's the unicorn parts of your project, what's really unique. Lean into those. We need more things. I think Canada, I think this territory and Turtle Island, what we do is tell really interesting stories that are super strange, and I really want everybody to lean into the uniqueness of their projects and to keep it original, and don't give up on your original ideas, because sometimes people are they don't know what you have. Just like with The Good Canadian, people are like, we're hesitant about this, we don't really understand what it means to turn the camera and look at non-Indigenous people, that seems a little scary, and we just kept going forward because we knew what we had in our hands, and like understand what you have in your hand first and really break that down and don't compromise on that.
Well, I'm glad you realized what you did, because The Good Canadian, it's a bit of a tough watch at points, but really important stuff, and hope you do get to soak it in here for a little bit. Congrats on that, and appreciate you joining us on the show this week.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dennis. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to you, Leena. It's all the time we have for Face to Face this week. You can always catch up on any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca, or visiting our APTN News page on YouTube. All face-to-face episodes are also available as podcasts, including this one. You can find those wherever you choose to download audio from. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dennis Ward. We'll see you back here next week.